So, how does a dry government document full of policy goals actually turn into a Royal Navy ship steaming towards a conflict zone? That's what we're going to unpack here. We're connecting the dots, between Britain's strategy on paper and its real-world actions on the high seas. Just think about it for a second. That phone in your hand, the coffee you're drinking, the clothes you're wearing, chances are it all spent some time on a massive ship just like this one. Maritime shipping is, and this is no exaggeration, the absolute backbone of the global economy. It's this huge, complex system that just quietly keeps our world running. But what happens when that backbone becomes a bullseye? Because in the world we live in today, these vital trade arteries are under threat more and more. So, yeah, what happens when all that carefully planned policy has to face the cold, hard reality of what's happening out on the open ocean? All right, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at Britain's global playbook. Then, we'll dive into its maritime advantage, check out the tools of its influence, see how they're being used in crises right now, and finally, try to chart the course for the future. Okay, first up, Britain's global playbook. We're talking high emissions versus some pretty tight budgets. So the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, the FCDO, has laid out these 6 core priorities. And they are big, ambitious goals. We're talking everything from putting growth and jobs first to beefing up the UK's security, rebuilding ties with Europe, tackling migration, leading on climate change, the whole shebang. This is the official mission statement. But, and this is a huge but, here's the catch. The FCDO is looking at a planned budget cut of 8.3% every year in real terms. Let that sink in. That is the single largest reduction of any UK government department. So how are they dealing with this? Well, the plan is to transform into a smaller, more modern department, but that could mean cutting their headcount by up to 25%. And that is the crucial point, right? This incredible tension right at the heart of UK foreign policy. How on earth do you achieve those 6 massive goals with way less money and potentially a quarter of your people gone? That's the challenge. So with the purse strings tightening on land, how does the UK still project its influence around the world? Well, for an island nation, the answer, not surprisingly, often lies at sea. Maritime power is one of Britain's most important tools for actually getting things done. Now, this trend is really, really interesting. Look at this. While the global fleet of ships has actually gotten bigger, the number of ships flying the UK flag has just plummeted. And this isn't just some abstract number, it has real consequences. It means Britain's leverage at places like the International Maritime Organization, the body that writes the rules for global shipping, gets weaker. Fewer ships basically means a quieter voice. So, to try and fight this decline, the government's main weapon is something called the tonnage tax. The simple version is this. It taxes shipping companies based on the size of their ships, not how much profit they make. The goal? Make it way cheaper and more attractive to register your ship in the UK. Recent changes are all about making the British flag more competitive and hopefully reversing that downward trend we just saw. And this all fits into a much bigger long-term plan called Maritime 2050. Think of it as the UK's blueprint for everything sea-related. From creating green shipping corridors to being a world leader in maritime tech, it's all about trying to secure its place as a major sea power for decades to come. Okay, so we've got the strategy, we've got the long-term goals, but how does this all work in practice? When the rubber meets the road, or I guess when the keel hits the water. Let's look at how these tools of influence are being used right this very minute. This table really shows you the incredible flexibility of sea power. Just look at 3 of the world's most intense crises right now. In each one, the UK is using its maritime assets in 3 totally different ways. In one, it's about protecting trade. In another, it's projecting military force. And in the third, it's delivering absolutely critical humanitarian aid. All right, let's zoom in a bit. We're going to take a closer look at 2 of those crises, where these grand strategies are being put to the test in real time. It all kicked off in late 2023. Houthi attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea started to seriously mess with global trade. The response was pretty quick. An international coalition, Operation Prosperity Guardian, was formed, and by January, the UK and the US were conducting direct strikes on Houthi targets to try and stop the attacks. And the impact of these attacks? Absolutely staggering. At one point, the capacity of container ships going through the Red Sea, which is a vital global shortcut, remember, was down by an estimated 64% from what was expected. This forced ships onto much longer, much more expensive routes around Africa. And that is a direct hit to that very first foreign policy goal we talked about, growth and jobs. Okay, now let's pivot. From a military operation to a humanitarian emergency. This quote from the Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, really sums up the sheer urgency driving a completely different kind of maritime mission. And this is the other face of foreign policy, isn't it? It's not always about warships and missiles. Sometimes it's about getting life-saving supplies to people who are desperate. And more, the sea is seen as a crucial pathway to make that happen. The UK is a really key partner in this big multinational effort to create a new sea route for aid into Gaza. So how does it work? Well, the aid is first screened in Cyprus. Then special vessels transport it to a new temporary pier just off the coast of Gaza. And from there, the aid is finally moved ashore for distribution. The UK has deployed a Royal Navy ship and is putting up nearly £10 million for the logistics to get this all done, bypassing the land routes that have become so difficult.
Which brings us right back to our central question. Can the UK's global ambitions actually be sustained? Can ambition meet reality?
And this slide right here is where it all comes together. Look at this. On one side of the scale, you have these huge, sprawling commitments, those 6 major foreign policy goals, massive military support for Ukraine, and taking a leading role in these new humanitarian sea corridors. But on the other side of the scale, a shrinking budget, a smaller diplomatic workforce, and a commercial fleet that's been in historic decline. See the problem? So, at the end of the day, this is the fundamental challenge for the UK on the world stage. The world is calling on it to do more in the Red Sea, in Gaza, in Ukraine. But at the same time, the resources back home to support that global role are getting tighter and tighter. The question really isn't about the ambition. The ambition is clearly there. The question is, can that ambition survive a collision with a very challenging reality?